Hello, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And it's terrific that you've given up your time to have a look into risk management with us. It's a pleasure on behalf of Courtney and I at GMA to thank Paul Mullarvey from Victor, who's joining us today. He's the key underwriter and an AGI product specialist. We've also got Warren Gauchi and Jing Ing from Victor as well joining us. And those of you who may have seen Paul in the past speaking at BMIs or at GMA meetings interstate, then you'd know him well. But Paul's been helping with GMA and on risk for quite a few years now. So, and if you refer back to the summer edition of the GMA Journal last year, we had a risk edition. That was on the back of some of the fires that had happened. But before that, Paul had written quite a bit on the issue of lithium-ion batteries, even back as far as autumn last year. So it's not a new topic. So today we're just going to look into what's going on with risk and clubs and lithium-ion batteries. And also Paul will share some insights gained from his close work with no doubt the insurance industry, but also with Golf Australia, GMA, the kart manufacturers, and the golf clubs and facilities out there. So, and no doubt no one's really charging in the clubhouse anymore at the moment, but we've seen from the fires that have happened that they're very devastating. So avoiding these sorts of problems and understanding a safer way to manage risk is what it's all about. So I'll hand it over to Paul.
Thanks, Paul. I'm hoping you can all hear me. I dropped out for a minute there and had to drop back in. So I'm hoping I'm back. I am actually back in and people can hear me. Is that Courtney here? Give it a nod and I can, oh yeah, thumbs up. Great. Thanks, Paul, and thanks, Courtney, for asking me or giving me the chance to have a chat. Can I start? This is probably a bit unconventional. Can I start by asking you a question, where everyone asked a question on what they would do? So let's say that you're responsible for $2.5 billion worth of golf club assets under insurance, and there's one particular risk exposure that's common to all $2.5 billion that you don't know much about. And all you really know about is that this particular risk exposure is responsible for starting fires and burning down golf clubs. So the question is, what would you do? It's a question that I was facing in December last year. So December last year, started December, I vividly remember it was the second round of the Australian Open. I was sitting at the Australian Golf Club. Brisbane Golf Club had just had a lithium battery fire the night before. My phone had rung pretty hot for most of the morning. I was sitting at the Australian, not particularly enjoying the golf because I had this problem bouncing around in my head. What do I do with $2.5 billion worth of golf club assets that we insure that all face this same risk? And the risk was caused damage at places like the Lakes Golf Club, Manly Golf Club, Eastern Golf Club, and Brisbane Golf Club. So yeah, as I said, I wasn't enjoying the golf too much. I was a bit preoccupied, but I'll give you some multiple choice answers. A, we could pretend that nothing happened and just hope that it doesn't happen again, which is always a strategy. Or B, we could learn as much as possible about this particular risk and how best to mitigate it, and do as much as we can to ensure that it doesn't, that another club doesn't suffer the same fate. That's a bit of a no-brainer, although I am aware of some that opted for strategy A, but I can tell you we went with strategy B or option B. So we've tried to learn as much as we can about what this particular risk is and how to best mitigate it. before we start, so what we'll do in the next, will only take 30 minutes, hopefully, but I'll run through and share what we've learned. There's not much point in that knowledge just being in the four walls of my office. It's more beneficial if what we've learned is out there in golf club land. So hopefully we can share what we've learned to date and the strategies that we think will best mitigate what this risk exposure is. It is lithium batteries. Before we start, I just want to point out two things. One, this is a moving picture. I can share what we've learnt to date and the strategies we believe best work from what we've currently learnt to date, but we're learning more about this stuff every day, and things are always constantly changing. So, you know, what we learn tomorrow could influence the way we think tomorrow, obviously, right? So we can only base what I can talk about on currently what we've learnt to date. And two, the other thing that I want you to think about is that lithium is a material. What I sort of have discovered is lithium has a split personality. It can be and is a very safe and stable fuel source, and it can be used in great ways to do great things when it's managed and handled correctly. Now, on the flip side, if it's not managed and handled correctly, it has the potential to be extremely volatile, and the results of that volatility can be quite catastrophic. So, yeah, it's got this split personality, but then again, so is petrol. You know, we have other materials that we know of and we've used for a long, long time that fit into that same category. So, you know, petrol, we know how to handle and we know how to manage. We've got a level of maturity in how we manage the risk that is petrol, right? But I don't think we're quite there yet with lithium. So what this is about, this is not about just getting rid of lithium. Lithium can be and is a really safe and stable source of material and source of power, but it's about managing it right. So that's the sort of the angle that we're trying to take and trying to educate. All right, so let's get into it. We've learned to
Not sure if anyone else has lost Paul for a second there. Just
Do you want me to call him or text him?
no, it's Warren's just in an office nearby, so I think he'll pop in and just check.
Okay.
That's okay. Thank you. I just saw him move out and sneak in there. So
I think I'm back now.
you are. Thank you, Paul.
All right. I'll try and might have to pedal faster. Okay, sorry.
Lithium battery.
Yeah, sorry about that, everyone. So this lithium batteries, we've categorized into 4 different levels or 4 different categories based on vulnerability and quality control. So I'll go into that in a sec. So level 1 is anything that is high vulnerability and as a golf club you have low quality control over. So we place the members' buggy batteries into that category, and I'll go through the reasons why. So vulnerabilities, what we've found is that they are vulnerable, these particular batteries, they're vulnerable to being dropped, knocked, bumped. They're vulnerable to getting wet, would have moisture build up. So those things are vulnerable to lithium-ion batteries of any kind. So if any kind of batteries or any kind of lithium-ion batteries are bumped and knocked and compromised in such a way, that can be quite disastrous. So the vulnerabilities are quite high on members' buggy batteries, and the quality control as a golf club that you have over them is quite low. So things like, you know, replacing batteries with cheaper non-genuine batteries, swapping batteries and chargers and not using the original equipment manufacturer recharger for a particular battery, because we know batteries have battery management systems built in, and they need to talk to the rechargers, and when they're not compatible, they can overcharge and disastrous things happen. Things like conditions of chargers, overcharging, general battery condition. So these things are really outside the quality or the control of a golf club, and all of those things can lead to ignition or compromise of the batteries. So because of that, we put members' buggy batteries in a category that is the highest risk. So high vulnerabilities and low quality control. Strategy on anything that is placed in that sort of a category for us is elimination. We believe that the best way to handle such a risk is just to eliminate it or avoid it. We made that call in last December. That was one of the things that I was thinking about sitting at the Australian, and that was a position that was supported by Golf Australia at the time and still is, and GMA supports that strategy as well. So again, at this point in time, we still believe that that's the best strategy to take with that particular risk exposure. Second category, or level 2, is high vulnerability. So things that are still vulnerable, but things that you've got as a golf club more control over. So that's what we put into that category is the club or the pro-owned buggy batteries. They're still vulnerable to the same things that members' buggy batteries are. So they can be dropped, knocked, bumped, they can get wet, etc. But the quality control that a golf club has is a lot higher. You have control over replacement batteries and getting genuine batteries. You have control over replacement chargers and getting the genuine chargers and which chargers to use. And you have control over servicing and things like maintenance and things like that. So it's a higher level of control, which means the risk is lower. So the strategy that we adopt for that is, or we recommend for that, is one of separation. So I think the vulnerabilities that they have still needs a level of risk mitigation. And we're aware that some of the fires started were due to the club-owned batteries or the club-owned units, not members. So there's still the risk associated with them. So separation is the key in terms of a strategy. So we know, and the basis of that is it's better to lose a 70, and it's as simple as the basis of that is to lose a $70,000 shed is much preferable to losing a $15 million clubhouse, and it's preferable to everyone. I imagine it's preferable to a golf club. It's preferable to certainly us as insurers, and it's probably a lot safer. You're not putting a whole clubhouse of people at risk. And we know that Brisbane's actually a good case study because it was the pro shop that caught fire. And if anybody knows the Brisbane Golf Club, it's a beautiful clubhouse. It's a 2-story, all timber weatherboard, heritage listed Queenslander style facility, it looks great, but it's quite vulnerable to fire. The only thing that saved it was separation. So the pro shop was separated by quite some distance to the clubhouse, and it was enough for the firefighting services to get in between. And with this lithium stuff, what I've learned is that they don't actually try to put the lithium fires out. They just try and save everything else from catching fire. So that was sort of the lesson we learnt from Brisbane. And it was that separation that became really key. Now, the separation bit, we've consulted with, over the last few months, we've consulted with Chubb's risk engineers out of London. So their risk engineer headquarters are in London. We've consulted with Chubb risk engineers locally. We've consulted with independent risk engineers. We've had input from fire engineers, and we've consulted with the golf car manufacturers, so Club Car, Yamaha, and E-Z-Go. The separation strategy came out of, well, to back the separation strategy up, the Chubb risk engineers in London came up with the distances of 12 metres if your clubhouse is built of non-combustible material. So that would be solid masonry, so double brick or concrete. If your clubhouse is built of combustible material, so you're obviously weatherboard or brick veneer, then the separation distance that they recommend is 24 metres. So yeah, the club or pro-owned buggy batteries, it's a lower risk than the members, but it still presents a risk. And best strategy that we've found to date is separation. 12 metres or 24 metres is what we currently recommend. Now, I say at this point in time because there are always developments, and we know, and if anybody knows their batteries, then there's the next wave or the next generation of batteries is something they call solid state batteries. Now, solid state batteries have been around in laboratories for a long, long time. They just haven't been able to make them commercially available. That is starting to change. It's been led by the automotive industry. We'll see in EVs change to, I think, from what I've been led to believe, in the next 5 to 7 years, EVs will swap from lithium-ion into what they've called solid-state batteries. Solid-state batteries is just the battery is actually a solid. So with lithium-ion, you have an electrolyte that passes through it and becomes a liquid, and the ions are carried by that electrolyte through a membrane that separates the two sides of the batteries. But the solid state is not in a liquefied form, or the electrolyte isn't liquid. So therefore, it's a lot more robust, apparently, from what I've been told, and a lot less prone to catching fire. So those things will come in. There's always technologically advanced or advancements coming in, but probably we won't see that in golf cars or buggies. Probably, for maybe 8 to 10 years. So still at this point in time, as I say, the separation strategy works for us. The other advancement in technology that we're looking into, and we're continuing to monitor and research, and we're working with a manufacturer of storage and recharging, or storage recharging lockers. Some of you may have seen on the market, you can get steel. They're basically a steel locker. You put your batteries in them, close the doors, and they charge within a steel locker. And we're working with the manufacturers of those to try and get certification that they are genuine fire rated. At the moment, the fire testing hasn't been done on those lockers yet, and they need to pass certain criteria before the risk engineers can tick them off to say, yeah, we're, as insurers, we're comfortable in the use of those lockers. So, hopefully that's not too far away, and hopefully those things can provide a real pragmatic solution for golf clubs. And so that's the idea. I know that this particular manufacturer is really keen on getting that level of accreditation so that they can then start making these available to golf clubs. And it's something that we would, if they get to that level of accreditation, we would support. So that's coming, and hopefully that's coming hopefully it's not too far away. So that's the second level. Third level is when we look at low vulnerability, but also low control. And we put the members' golf cars in that particular category. So we'd certainly separate buggies and golf cars. And speaking with the likes of Club Car and Yamaha, the terminology that they use to describe what they build is motorized golf cars. So that's what we go with, as opposed to motorized buggies. So the buggies are the frames that we used to push, and they carry your golf bag. The motorized golf cars are the things you sit in and drive. So third level, or the third category, is low vulnerability but also low control. So your members' golf cars fit into that category. The vulnerabilities don't appear to be what they are for the buggy batteries. They appear to be more robust. They're not as prone to being dropped, etc., or bumped or whatever. So the vulnerabilities appear to be low, but equally the quality control that golf clubs have over what members do with them is also low. So secondhand vehicles equals an unknown history in a lot of cases. We don't know if batteries have been swapped in or out. We don't know the service history, etc. Replacement batteries with non-genuine batteries, again, the compatibilities between chargers and batteries, etc. The recharging conditions, with things like we were at a particular golf club having a look, and the general manager happened to pluck a set of keys off there. I think there was about 40 keys. He plucked one set off to open up the shed to have a look, and this particular recharger had a wet towel draping over it to dry, which is quite disastrous. It's draping a wet towel over a recharger is a really bad thing to do. But again, it just highlights the fact that, and that general manager wished he had picked one of the other set of 40 keys, but just happened to pick that one. But it does highlight the fact that golf clubs don't have a real high level of control over this particular category. So again, the strategy is separation. We realise at a practical, pragmatic level that there are golf clubs that offer the service to members to house members' golf cars, which is fine. It's part of being a golf club and part of being a member. So we realise that we want to work with golf clubs on that, but because the quality control that clubs have over that particular risk exposure is low, we recommend a strategy of separation. And again, it's the 12 and 24 metres rule. So yeah, better to lose a $70,000 shed than a $15 million clubhouse. So that brings us to, if you've got any questions, by the way, just jump in. We don't have to wait to the end. If you need to, or if you want to mention anything or say something or ask me to clarify something, just jump in. Level 4 is the level of low vulnerability and high control. So again, the vulnerability of the golf cars is not what the buggies are. So any club or pro-owned golf cars we put into this category, low vulnerability, and the club has a high level of quality control over these particular units, right? So the strategy that we therefore take is one of management. And this is where I get to the point we've mentioned before. Lithium's got this split personality. We don't manage it right, then it can be very volatile and catastrophic. We manage it right, it can be stable and non-volatile. So the strategy around club-owned or pro-owned golf cars is management. Separation is still the key, is still best. We still recommend separation for everything because there's still a heightened risk that comes with it. Even if you take the lithium out, what you've done is, or what there is a heightened level of electricity. So you've got a heightened load or an increased load of electricity. And if you're attached that to the clubhouse, and we know that electrical faults are responsible for something like 80% of fires in commercial settings or any setting. And so to have an electrical hazard or an electrical heightened risk attached to your clubhouse, you really need to just manage that. Like, forget about the fact that it's lithium. You really need to manage the fact that there's a heightened load of electricity. So in managing those things, we've come up with sort of 5 basic mitigation actions that we would think are a pretty good idea to follow. First one being that the electrical circuit that is recharging your golf cars is installed for the purpose of recharging those golf cars. And it's installed by a qualified electrician, and it has its own separate fuses that run and are just there dedicated to charging those golf cars. So what we're looking for is, obviously, we don't want an extension lead running down from the kitchen, so we want the setup to be a proper setup. Second thing is, we recommend that circuitry, and we recommend all circuitry at your golf club, but particularly that circuitry, has annual thermal scans performed. So thermal scans are something that an electrician can do. They need a particular specific thermal imaging camera. Not all electricians have it, so you just need to find yourself a Sparky that has one of these cameras and that can provide these scans. And what it does is it scans the fuses and the panel, and anything that is running too hot, the electrician is notified. You can't see it, but an electrician will be able to identify it and say, there's something wrong, we need to do something about this. This has the potential to overload and ignite. And so you basically catch something out ahead of time. So thermal scans on that recharging circuit is the second thing. The third thing is get test and tag of the recharges. So the recharging equipment that comes down from the ceilings or wherever they are, get them test and tagged annually. So an annual test and tag of those things will pick up any faults with those recharges and any faults with the connections to the golf cars, etc. So that's the third thing, annual test and tags. Fourth thing is that if you're going to modify the golf cars in any way that has anything to do with the electrical, putting a sticker on it for your golf club, no dramas. But if you need to modify those golf cars in any way, get the modifications done by the original equipment manufacturer. So if they're a club car, get any modifications done by Club Car or a service provider approved by Club Car. So if Club Car can't get out or whatever, in that particular case, ask them for a service provider approved by the original equipment manufacturer. So any modifications you make to the golf cars, we believe it's a really good idea that it's the original equipment manufacturer or a service provider approved by that makes those modifications. And then the fifth thing is servicing. So we just think our position is, or our recommendation is, that the golf cars are serviced as per owner's manual. So if the owner's manual says service it twice a year, then get it serviced twice a year and get that service done by, again, the original equipment manufacturer or a service provider approved by them. So yeah, if it's a Yamaha golf car, get Yamaha or a service provider approved by Yamaha to do the servicing and service those golf cars as per the owner's manual. So those are the 5 basic things, and they're not really concerned with lithium. They're more concerned around managing the heightened risk that is the extra electricity and the load that brings. In addition, you can do things like a daily visual inspection at the end of each day. So you're putting the golf cars away. A daily inspection that's just a visual inspection is a good idea, or a weekly inspection that you use a checklist. You may only have 4 or 5 things on the checklist, but a visual inspection that says, yes, we've checked this, this, and this, just log that. That's you're more likely to pick up something that, things like where the recharger cable hits and connects and plugs into the golf cart. If that connection's loose for whatever reason, you might pick something like that up in just doing a visual inspection. So those things are important. In addition to that, it's always a good strategy because it's very rare that we ever find any golf club that is fully sprinkled. And this is particularly the case if your golf cars are attached in some way to your clubhouse, in a basement underneath, or attached to the back of the pro shop, which is part of the clubhouse, etc. So if there is an attachment and you don't have that clear separation that I mentioned before, and it's very rare that golf clubhouses are sprinkled. So the time taken for any firefighting services to get on site becomes absolutely critical. So if you can put smoke detectors in the areas of where you're storing and recharging that's monitored by a third party, then anything that does happen, you can get firefighting services there ahead of time. Smoke detectors that are photo-optical are better, I'm told, than ionisation. So there's two types I've learnt, ionisation and photo-optical. Ionisation is the type that you and I have in our homes. You can buy them from Bunnings or whatever you get them from. Photo-optical is a more of a commercial grade, but I'm told the photo-optical ones will detect, and if anyone's seen the Oatlands video clip that was distributed by Golf Australia, you'll notice that before a battery ignites, there's a smoke that's given off. Photo-optical sensors, I'm told, will sense that smoke 15 minutes before ionisation sensors will detect it. So that 15 minutes could be pretty critical when getting firefighting services on site, and really could be the difference between whether your members lose their clubhouse or whether you just you get a charred recharging area, but life goes on. So so if you can get some smoke detectors that's monitored by a third party, that's a really, really good idea. In addition to that, the only other mitigating action that we've been able to sort of come up with is there is a body, a global regulatory body called the Outdoor Equipment Power Institute. They are based out of Northern America, but they are global, and they happen to have a category for motorized golf cars. We support any manufacturers that are members of this regulatory body, because to be able to be a member of and a signatory of the Outdoor Equipment Power Institute, you need to satisfy certain criteria in terms of things like just safety and research and development into your batteries. So if your golf car fleet or any of your golf cars that you use at your club are members of OEPI, that's always a good thing. Now, currently, as I understand, the members of that particular regulatory body that distribute golf cars in Australia are Club Car, Yamaha, and EasyGo. We're not in the position or the business of endorsing particular brands, but from a pure risk point of view, we take some comfort the fact that those particular manufacturers are members of this particular regulatory body. So that's it. That's kind of what we've come up to. There's the 4 categories. So we got members buggies, club-owned buggies, members golf cars, club-owned golf cars, or club or pro-owned golf cars. And we try to be as pragmatic as possible, and we're trying to get that balance between mitigating this particular risk exposure and what's practically and pragmatically possible, at a golf club. And so that's sort of what we've been able to achieve to date. As I said, we're still working with the likes of the manufacturers of the storage units. We think that could be a good idea. And then, we'd be eagerly awaiting the solid state batteries, where apparently I'm told they just sort of cave in on themselves. They don't actually ignite if they fault. So there's always things to do. So they're the four categories and strategies that we currently promote.
Thanks, Paul. I had a question in the chat. How many club-owned motorised carts have exploded in Australia? The fires at Eastern and Brisbane, weren't they member-owned batteries? Did you hear that? Yep.
Sorry, how many club?
So the first one's, how many club-owned motorised carts have exploded in Australia? And then the question was, the fires at Eastern and Brisbane, weren't they member-owned batteries?
Yeah, so let's be clear on the definitions of cart and buggies. So if you're using the word cart to describe a motorised golf car that you sit and drive with a steering wheel, I can't answer that question. I'm not aware in recent times of any motorised golf cars, lithium batteries exploding or igniting.
And I think the cart companies said that too. From their knowledge, they're not aware of any of their own carts that have caught fire. Yeah,
correct. So and that's pretty good, which is why we put them in the category of low vulnerability. We haven't seen that. So they're, as far as vulnerability goes, they appear to be really low. And in meeting with and discussing it with the golf car manufacturers, they're not aware of any ignition in the golf cars either. So that's certainly the case, which is why most of the strategy around mitigating the risk for golf cars, particularly club-owned golf cars, is around managing the electrical load. But we know that you've got an electrical load. You get an electrical fault, and that ignites because of an electrical fault. Then you got lithium batteries that are, if you add 15 or more quite large lithium batteries to that, you're going to get a pretty potent mix and quite a catastrophic result. So, the management is around is not so much the lithium batteries, those particular batteries catching fire or igniting. It's around the electricity load and any faults in electricity and that catching fire and then igniting the lithium batteries. Talking to fire engineers, they say that any fire that they go to, they will find evidence of lithium batteries having ignited. Now, what they can't do is tell whether it was the lithium battery that ignited the fire or the fire that ignited the lithium battery. Either way, you add lithium batteries to the mix, it becomes a really, really potent problem for firefighters, and it becomes an increased volatility type situation. The vulnerability of the actual battery pack in a club car, I'm really confident in, actually. Talking with Club Car themselves, and the work that they put into their research and development, I'm quite confident with that product. But it's more around how you manage that within, particularly if it's attached to your clubhouse. You got $15, $20, $25 million asset, $10 million asset, whatever you have. And it's that electrical load that becomes the problem. So that's why the strategy of management is something that we that we push. The Eastern and the Brisbane fires, from what we understand, were buggy member. I think Eastern might have been member buggy battery, and Brisbane might have been a club-owned buggy battery. Either way, and again, you can't prove. The fire engineers can't stand in court and say it was definitely this or it's definitely that. We believe that was the case, and it strongly points that way. But they were the buggy batteries as opposed to carts. How's that, Paul? Is that sort of the answer?
Yeah, that sounds right. I think just clarifying, it hasn't been 100% able to be verified, particularly in Eastern's case. It just burned so hot it could have come one way or the other. Another one, our pro shop owned buggies, maybe I'm just clarifying if that's carts, but let's go with pool buggies if it's pool buggies, are all underneath our 2-story clubhouse. Any suggestions for separation when we are limited on space but in a high risk area? Maybe can I just clarify whether that is buggies as we know it, the pool buggies?
Yeah, because they'll be
because it's a
different treatments. Yeah.
Even a thumbs up or anyway, the question's there. So maybe we could split into two. Under a 2-story clubhouse, obviously higher risk.
Yeah, and the thing, we particularly think about this risk as a risk to property, right?
Motorised carts, it's motorised carts. That's reduce the risk a bit.
Yeah, the golf cart. So the strategy for that is around management. They're the 5 mitigating actions that we've come up with in terms of just mitigating that electrical load. Make sure that the electrical circuit is purpose installed. Thermal testing, test and tag. If you're going to get the carts modified, make sure they're done by the original equipment manufacturer. And servicing, make sure you get the servicing done as per the owner's manual. Yeah, so they're like, you can park your motorised golf cars in the reception area of your golf club if you want. It's as long as you're managing that particular risk, So that particular risk is around management, not so much separation. Separation is still king, right? Separation, if you can do it, but you not all golf clubs can, right? So that's the pragmatic part. Now, if you can do it, then definitely go ahead and do it. I would, but if you can't, then it's around managing that risk, and that risk can be managed.
Yep, and in this particular case, it was pro shop owned, which again is better than members owned.
Yeah, that's right. You got control over all those things.
All right. Any other questions? People are welcome to take themselves off mute and ask the question as well, or they can just type it in. Here's another one. Will these assessment strategies likely default to maintenance sheds and the vehicles and equipment held in these spaces?
Yeah, in terms of, so you got battery powered mowers and battery powered, more and more lithium battery powered machinery. Again, I think it's more a question of management. You don't want, it could be the biggest disruption to your golf club if you lose all your maintenance equipment, because if you got your golf course, you can still play golf. But again, so it comes back to just that pure management of have those recharging, anything that's recharging electricity, just manage that as a risk. Have thermal scans done annually, get the test and tags done annually, visually inspect, talk to your ground staff and say, look, if you find that connections are loose, or if you see wear and tear on batteries, then speak up, and we'll contact the manufacturer and we'll get them sorted. So I think it's just that part of it comes down to common sense. And Paul, you and I have talked about how tradies have been using lithium batteries in their tools for a decade, on site, and they get bumped and whatever else. So I think it's about being it's just about being aware of the fact that it is a heightened risk and managing that accordingly. Particularly with the stuff that you can control. So you can control the machinery you have in your machinery shed, how that's recharged. You can control how the rechargers are used, which rechargers, replacement batteries, all of that stuff. You can control the fuses and make sure that the circuitry is running how it should be by doing thermal scans, etc.
A couple of questions. Is Australia leading the world in managing lithium-ion exposure at golf clubs? And another one is, how much weight do you think insurance companies put on having them stored separately off-site versus having them under the club? that probably goes back to the pricing built into policy, I would imagine, and the deductibles and things like that.
Yeah. So the first question first. Yes, we are leading the way. There is, I know Chubb is arguably the biggest insurer in the world, and globally they're looking at Australia and how we're managing it, and what we're doing with golf clubs, and it really is leading. We are leading the way in terms of not just golf clubs, but if you think of I don't know if anyone read the news. You read the news every day, and there's lithium fires everywhere. In South Korea, there was a Mercedes-Benz that was parked underneath a building and ignited and took out, 46 something other cars, and the integrity of the concrete foundations of that building are now in question, and everything else. So it's a big problem globally. I don't have any direct concerns around strata titles in South Korea, but I do have concerns around golf clubs in Australia. So we're doing what we can, and the rest of the world's having a look at what we do. And the second part, your insurance policies. Now that's something that any risk associated with your club, with your golf club, is taken into consideration by an insurer. So your broker's job is to present the risk accurately, and in the best light possible. So if as a golf club you present your risk and you've got a heightened risk that's attached to your $20 million clubhouse, then the insurer is going to look at that and ask, what are you doing about that particular risk? Now, if you are mitigating it to satisfaction, then that's one thing. If you're not mitigating it, and that's a risk exposure, like anything else, that will be considered by an insurer in the policies, and whether it's premium, or whether it's deductibles, or whether it's exclusions, or whether it's flat out decline, they're all things that an insurer can work with, but that will be between the insurer and the broker, and with you working closely with your broker, and your broker should be able to provide you with feedback from the insurer. They should have access to risk engineers, and so they are your source of information for this stuff, for your particular golf club and your particular set of circumstances, because everyone's different. But that's how an insurer would look at it. And policies are influenced by the risk presented. That is what policies are based on.
So I guess storing separately offside versus having them under the club, there should be a difference in premium potentially from that move.
Yeah, potentially. But as I said, it depends on what you've got at the club. So if you've got them charging underneath your clubhouse, and you're running an extension lead down that you picked up from Bunnings into a power board that you bought from Coles, and you're charging 5 golf clubs or 5 golf cars off that, then that's a lot different risk to having everything ticked off that I went through before. And so you can go even further. You talk to your broker and talk to and get risk engineers advice, and you can have you can do fire isolated rooms, and you can create fire isolations, and there's a lot you can do, whether it's in budget or whatever. That's where your broker comes into advising you on your risk. But naturally, if there's, I'll take you back to the start. You got $2.5 billion worth of assets under insurance that's that's at risk. What do? You insure the ones that aren't as at risk.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks, Paul. We've had a very good look at this issue, and some of these, or quite a lot of this, will be in the next GMA journal, and also this is being recorded, so useful to share with someone perhaps in your club or on your board, or have a look over it again and talk to your broker about it. If there's nothing else, then I'll thank you very much, Paul, for coming online, and thank you for your colleagues.
Can I just add, Paul, before we go? Sorry, mate. Just before we go, I was just about to say we tend to look at this as a property problem, because it's fire and fire damage, and we've seen the Eastern Golf Club and everything else, and you see the property damage. But don't forget about the liability problem that this creates. Golf clubs, their executives and their board and their governance have a duty of care to maintain a safe environment for everybody that comes to the golf club. And if you've seen the Oatlands video clip, and the young man run out the door, he managed to get out, which is great. If he didn't, or if at Eastern or somewhere like that, it was not just the four walls and the roof that were damaged, but somebody personally lost their life or etc., then that's a whole different kettle of fish, but it's still exposed to the same risk. We tend to think about this as a property risk, but there's probably a greater aspect to it in terms of the liability risk as well. So upholding your duty of care as a golf club is quite a serious consideration.
Terrific. And also maybe reminding members to, when they take their own battery home, to charge it perhaps safely, give them some tips as well, because there'd be plenty just charging it in their back room thinking it's all a bit of a beat up. Not that happy that the club's not doing it for them anymore.
Yeah, look, off the record, I did learn of a golf club president who came home on Sunday to half his garage having exploded, and his buggy battery wasn't even on charge. It just just went that way. So, look, just personally, I'll be pushing my golf clubs for a little while yet. I might wait till the solid state batteries come out.
Well, okay. Well, that's a solid topic to finish on. So thanks, Paul. I appreciate your time, and thank you, Courtney, for organising this, and thanks everyone for joining us. In addition to our other colleagues in Warren and Jing. So appreciate it very much. We'll put it on the website soon, and we'll look forward to more discussions on this, and obviously better management of lithium-ion. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.